button click.
No worries. So welcome everybody. Those of us who have the letters DAF in front of our names come to you from the Deep Adaptation Forum. And we want to welcome you to Forum in Transition. I'm really glad to get to interface with your organization and the people who are drawn to it. We want to give you during this 2 hours an experience that's hopefully like you could expect if you participated in one of our online Zoom groups. We'll be together for the first hour, actually 50 minutes, take a short break, and then we'll have small group experiences for the second hour. And depending on how many of us, that will determine how small they are. We always start our gatherings with a presencing and a check-in. And Sasha will lead us in the presencing, and then we'll go into breakout rooms in pairs to do a check-in, and I'll walk you through that in a minute. So Sasha, over to you.
Thank you, Terry. And welcome everybody. Thank you so much for coming. So just take a few deep breaths. And just feel your body. And just allow yourself to acknowledge whatever it is that's been passing in your day. It's still with you. And release whatever you can release of that. You might want to move your body gently and feel your feet on the floor or wherever they are. Just feel how they're resting and feel how your body is being held by whatever it is that you are being supported on. And notice how really you can just relax into that. Gravity does so much of that. Allow gravity to just let your body be held to the earth. Breathe in a few more times and just really pay attention to your breath. And just notice how you're feeling as you come into this space. And whatever it is fine. Just acknowledge it. Acknowledge yourself in the state that you, mind and your body and your emotions are in. And as you are feeling that awareness of your body, your mind, yourself, just allow your awareness to extend out just a little more and allow it to come into this space we're creating here, the Zoom space. You can even imagine how if we were physically in each other's presence, you might reach out and be close to the bodies of other people. You might hear their breathing. So allow yourself to come into this Zoom place and allow it to be the space we're creating together. And Terry, back to you.
Again, welcome everyone. We like to do a check-in because we want to put relationships first and we want to get a chance to know each other a little bit. And then we're going to do some show of hands. Do you know how to raise the hand on your reactions, to raise your Zoom hand like this? Okay, if you don't, raise your real hand. And if you don't have video, say something in the chat. But this is a good time to on video, even if you aren't going to be on video mostly the rest of the time. Okay, so everybody give me a raised hand to show that you can. Okay, because I can't see you all at once. It's fun that there are more than 25 of you, which is what my screen holds. Okay, awesome. Now put your hand down, which is the same thing again. Okay. And so are we all back? Ooh, the screen keeps moving. All
Yes,
right.
we are.
So I have some questions for you. Is there anybody here who is not familiar with the term deep adaptation? Raise your hand. Okay. So we have, I think 3 people. Yeah. All right. So this is based on a paper by Jim Bendel that came out in 2018. He appears to have coined the term. And it was a very dire paper that said that some kind of collapse was likely to happen within the next 10 years, or actually it was much more categorical than that, but he's backed off since then. And that surface adaptation would not cut it, that deep adaptation is required to our predicament. It's not a problem with a quick fix, it's a predicament. Okay, so, and the rest of you probably have some familiarity with that. Now you see the people with the DAF, they are joining us as part of the team from the Deep Adaptation Forum. Can forum people wave, please? All right, thank you. Who here is familiar with the Deep Adaptation Forum? Who it doesn't have a DAF in front of them? Mary Jo and Janice, not too many people. Leslie, okay. So we get to tell you about us. Who here has read or at least skimmed the paper by Jim Bendel called Deep Adaptation? Okay, a few more. Yeah. So it was criticized at the time for being too dire. It was going to cause everybody to be paralyzed with depression and not save the planet. And what we have discovered in the forum was that we were already paralyzed with depression, some of us, or just, you know, pretty much trying to hold it together, but that to name something and to find community about it is empowering. But we do have a grim outlook on the state of the world. So if you hear some of that here, know that you do not have to agree with us. We accept diversity of opinion, and we're not trying to convince you of anything. But if you also sometimes look at the future and say, it looks really grim, then you have people who can support you and validate you and help you figure out maybe how to change your story of how the world works so we can keep loving and living and serving. So who here has experienced dark thoughts or unpleasant feelings about the prospects for human and non-human life on the planet? Raise your hand. Yeah. So this is where we are. This is real, and it's hard to talk about. Our culture is not used to talking about hard things. And this, to me, this is the end of the question, so you can take your hands down. Thank you very much. This, to me, I think is the heart of the Deep Adaptation Forum. So in the forum, we can share those dark thoughts and those hard feelings and be understood and accepted, not be dismissed or told that we're doomist or too negative or just wrong. And so for me and for a lot of other people, the forum has been a refuge where we can be honest, be ourselves, be understood, and also where we meet people who have been dealing with hard things or considering the possibility of hard things for a long time, staring disaster in the face, if you will, and learning how to cope and how to be of service no matter how bad things get. And that's a pretty nice skill. And I welcome you to put stuff in the chat, and I may or may not recognize it as it goes by, but I'll try to remember to take a deep breath. And Wendy, you're going to help me sort out the chat. Is that correct? Okay, I got a nod. Okay, so maybe I will take a breath there and check in with questions. Let's see. How does this interact with Joanna Macy and the work that reconnects? We are fans. We are, I think, almost to a person, Joanna Macy fans. And I could get into details, but just say that there's a lot of overlap. And whose partner, friends, or family member don't like talking to you about stuff because of your views, because you're too much of a buzzkill? Let's do a last raise hand on that one. Yeah, okay. So, and you know what? I don't have to talk to my friends about this because I have other places to vent, and I can do useful things with my friends and for them without dragging them places they don't want to go. Okay, so deep adaptation is more than the Deep Adaptation Forum. People have many projects, many different approaches to, okay, if things are as bad as I think they are, what shall I do about it? What shall we do about it? And these people are in all walks of life. And sometimes they come to the forum looking for collaborators or looking for pre-existing projects. And hopefully they find the collaborators, but you will not find a lot of pre-existing projects outside of facilitation, a group of facilitators and a group of guides who are, a lot of them are psychologists, who are helping people deal with the emotional part of deep adaptation. And that's just how it turned out, because we're kind of a self-organizing group, and that's who got organized. But we're hoping that people are finding their people one way or another as they go through the forum. And I'll walk you through some of the ways that you can go through the forum to find your people. Within the forum, we try to prioritize relationship. So how we're together is more important than what we produce within our organization. So we don't have a lot of recipes, how-to videos. Instead, what we have are spaces and containers for difficult conversations. And we have few answers. We have spaces where you can safely ask the hard questions. Not a lot of structure. That means there's room for you to join us and help build something. It also means that if you say, plug me in, we probably don't have a slot to plug you into. We are an international organization, and Jem Bendel is English, currently living in Bali. and we have people from all over the world. And we want you to meet some of them. In particular, most of our core team is in the UK and Europe. We do have one core team member on the call with us, Tom Schlegel. Tom, do you want to just wave and say hi? There
Hi, everybody.
are.
I'm so thrilled all our volunteers are doing this for us tonight. Thank you.
All right. And so, David, are you ready to? We have a 5-minute video for people to tell you a little about what the forum means to them. And they all have nice accents and are in bed because it's 2 in the morning where they are.
I'd like to first of all say welcome to everyone. Thank you. It is so wonderful to see you, and thank you for joining us. There is just one thing I want to say about the video full of British people. You will hear a term, an NI number, and that means national insurance number, and it's roughly equivalent to a social security number. It's a tiny thing, but it's good to know. So I'm going to share screen now and play the video. Here we go.
Really open our hearts and minds. The emotions which come up can feel devastating, they can feel unbearable. And we need to learn ways of bearing them, of allowing them to change us. And so the ways of being together, what you call the facilitation methods and processes, are intended to allow people to show up with all of themselves, with the stuff that's been suppressed, with the stuff that we're scared of, with all of our humanity, not just the productive, active, the parts of us that are feeling urgency, but all of ourselves.
Initially, it was just being able to breathe out, because I'd found a place where there were people who shared my perspective and my reality. So I felt instantly safe and comfortable and accepted.
Firstly, the nourishment of that deep connection, and the reassurance that sometimes I've not gone bonkers, gone insane. The sort of living in between two worlds thing, that's been hugely nourishing. And an enormous felt shift from I to we. An opportunity to connect with and learn from really fabulous people all over the world that I would never otherwise have met.
How does it help? It helps to know I'm not alone. It helps me to make fear more manageable so that I'm not paralyzed, and that rather than having, you know, a prepper mindset, rather than going and living on top of the only mountain we have here with a gun and no NI number, it helps me do the inner work that I hope will help me do the best that I can where I am and for the people around me as collapse unfolds.
Deep adaptation for me has been equal parts safety net, mattress that I landed on when I fell, comfort blanket when it's just too much and it's rubbish, passion and fire when I've stopped feeling rubbish, friendship, companionship with people I don't even know in real life. Like people, like I meet people and like within seconds. That's quite an experience. I've had 58 years worth of being a human being, and it's a rare thing to click with consistently a group of people, you know, it just so very, very quickly.
I'm not caught up in cognitive dissonance, avoidance, distraction. It's just there with me that, you know, we're in a global transformation event. That my life, my tiny fragment of my life, is at a moment on Earth of enormous change at every level. And that much of what I'm accustomed to will collapse. And I don't know how much, but having really settled into that, it's been very enabling and a lot less cognitive dissonance, stress, anxiety, and all that sort of thing. And it gives me bandwidth to be with other people as well.
The ways in which we can learn together more about how fear happens, how we can support each other to contain that, to let it move us, to let it change us, and not make decisions from a state of panic, which might be decisions which are about, I need to make sure I'm safe, full stop. I need to make sure I'm safe and my loved ones are safe. That we can make choices which are a bit more grounded, are more compassionate, are rooted in love and respect and humility, that we can support each other to get better at being emotional beings. And this isn't to this isn't to say that taking action isn't important. It really is important, but it is not separate from the individual and collective inner work that is needed.
Thank you, David. Thank you for preparing that video. That was a lot of work. So I'm told that you all can navigate websites just fine, but we still want to offer you some basics if you want to explore the forum after this event. Most people come to us first through our Facebook group, Deep Adaptation. It's private and it has over 13,000 members. It has beautiful, radiant posts, and it regularly has comments that challenge our core values of compassion, curiosity, and respect because it's Facebook. And events are listed there. We have a website, deepadaptation.info. That's our home website. And then we have a legacy website called deepadaptation.ning.com. These are going up in the chat if you want to capture them. And that website has some valuable stuff in it, but it doesn't get used very much anymore. The most valuable thing that is updated regularly is the events page. So you can go exploring after this. And we use a framework that Jem Bendell created that we found super helpful, the 4 R's. The 4 R's are resilience, relinquishment, restoration, and reconciliation. So you see them in the chat. Resilience is, what do we most value that we want to keep and how? Relinquishment, what do we need to let go of so as not to make matters worse? Restoration, what could we bring back to help us with these difficult times? And reconciliation, with what and whom shall we make peace as we awaken to our mutual mortality? And obviously, spiritual traditions have been doing this work forever. It just feels a little more urgent to us than it did before. And within the 4 R's framework is a nice way to have conversations about our personal journeys of deep adaptation. David has been hosting some of those conversations. And David, do you want to say a few words about, I don't know, the themes that have come up? Whatever you want to say.
Thank you. Yes, I'll just say a couple of words about it. The 4 R's are presented as a framework for inquiry, not as a doctrine. Jem Bendell has been very clear that he doesn't have answers. What he's helping us to do is to think about things in an orderly way. And the 4 R's can be very useful as a framework to grab onto when you first arrive at collapse awareness, as we call it. It proves that there is a way to think about some of the most difficult things that humans have ever had to think about. This is one framework. There are many frameworks. This is where we start, but it's not where we end. The results of a 4-week inquiry that I hosted are very interesting to me, and I'll be very brief. It turns out that when you talk about resilience, relinquishment, and restoration in a group of well-informed people who are talking to each other, the conversation turns to community. Resilience is more powerful when you're with others in a community. The relinquishment we need to consider is the relinquishment of the idea of the individual, the power, individualism, and that we can make it on our own. It's not true. We need other people. Restoration is the restoration of human bonds to create community and make us strong in difficult circumstances. So it turns out that those 3 tend toward a discussion of community. Reconciliation, interestingly, is slightly different because it's about making peace and it's about mortality. It seems to go toward the idea of responsibility. What are we responsible for? To whom are we responsible? It even goes to our role in the unfolding difficulties that we encounter today. Community and responsibility. This is just one set of discussions that have come out of the 4 R's, but they provided for me an excellent way to begin the discussion, to begin the thinking, and to create a common language among people in the Facebook group and in other places where people get together. So I invite you to take a look at that, and Wendy and I will be doing a Q&A. So if you have particular questions in the second half, if you have particular questions, we'd be happy to discuss at that time. Thank you.
Thanks, David. We have actually a little time to share some personal reflections from some of the other forum members who are here. And now I can't remember who said they had a little personal reflection. Would you please speak up, whoever it is? Kiara, you said you had one.
I'm going to pass it to Wendy because she's the one who first volunteered. So go ahead, Wendy.
Thanks, Kiara. Thanks, Terry. We're just going to mention one of the 4 R's that makes a lot of sense for me is resilience. And I come from a transition background. And I think transition is all about setting up resilience for ourselves, our neighbors, our street, our local town. I've moved to Portugal as a climate migrant, I would say. And I have a small piece of land here that I'm developing a food forest in classic permaculture style. I'm also working to learn Portuguese and be able to work with local Portuguese people to do more zero waste, more recycling, a produce swap, because most of our neighbors are small farmers, or they're big people who have small farms. And yeah, I'm really focused on resilience at the moment. But I also find, because resilience, I think, is also inner resilience, much like transition, there's inner and outer. My inner resilience work is being in deep adaptation and being able to share what's going on for me when I look out the window and the weather is just absolutely strange for the time of year. There's just a place that I can go with the doubt and the yeah, I don't even know what the word is anymore. Climate grief, I suppose we call it. But I find myself in deep adaptation a lot, working on my own inner resilience and ways to handle that. Thanks, Terry.
Thanks, Wendy. Anybody else? Kiara, do you want to go now?
Well, one of them is restoration, which means, you know, letting go and keeping stuff. For me, that's been the crux of grief. It's been the crux of, you know, I'm now calling it a liminal space, because really I was able to, it helped me to let go of some beliefs that I was hanging on to about humanity and where we were going, because I started to get these visions of collapse. And, you know, as we read the paper and we get informed, and if anyone's slightly interested in science, we get to understand that this world cannot continue in the way that it is, whether it's, you know, social collapse or economic collapse. We're all heading toward that way, but it doesn't have to be, you know, bleak, because one of our, you know, when I'm able to let go, I make space for resilience. It really, and resilience is part of our nature. And it's helpful when we were kids to have this kind of natural resilience nurtured. And if we haven't, we have to work a little harder. And it makes us feel very vulnerable. A lot of shame has come up for me because I'm part of the problem. One of the things I realized that I pollute, you know, if you're living in the big city, you don't know where to put your compost, even if you are collecting your compost. Just little things that are, anyhow, just seeing that and being amongst friends with whom I can have this kind of conversation has allowed me to take actions. I call them acts of love. It doesn't matter how small they are, but they are important. It's also part of DA's mission, which I posted in the chat. I feel really connected to the vision, the mission of deep adaptation. So learning to understand your mental models, my mental models, what I needed to let go of was certainly important. And this was a beautiful net to be caught in, to catch. People were there to catch me. So that's it.
Thank you, Kiara. And because I didn't see it when it flew by on the chat, let me read to you DA's mission, the short form: embodying and enabling loving responses to our predicament. And I personally am guided by some words from the Talmud. You are not required to complete the work, neither are you free to desist from it. And my particular offering, aside from a bunch of administration stuff, has been communal grief rituals. And this is, I started out doing stuff pretty similar to the work that reconnects. I call it grief, gratitude, and courage. And I've kind of been gravitating lately to stuff that's less workshoppy, just grief circles. And people don't know that you're allowed to grieve anything. You're allowed to grieve the planet. You're allowed to grieve your own inability to stop polluting. You're allowed to grieve injustice. And I think it's a darn healthy thing to do. And I thought of it initially as relinquishment because it is relinquishing the ideas I grew up with about happy is always good and more is always better and all those other ideas that are killing us. But it turns out it's also restoration, because traditional cultures, most traditional cultures had some kinds of communal grief rituals that we have pretty much lost. So we're recreating them within the forum. And let's see, grief, gratitude, and courage. And at some point, I'll pop my website in the chat. Yeah. And we will have an entire Q&A, but I'm going to take a deep breath. And if you want to put questions in the chat because you think they might be interesting to more than one, you know, to the group as a whole, please do so. And do any of the other forum people want to say a few words about their experience and their approach. And you notice we have the very practical, the food forest, and also the spiritual and inner. And most of us are doing a little of both. And we don't have a prescription of how to do it, just that we are figuring it out together. Brennan.
Yeah, Brennan here in Western Massachusetts. And while we're waiting for those questions to arise, I just thought I'd mention that for me personally, what GEM's paper initially did for me in February of 2019 was yank me squarely out of my denial. And the gift that came along with that sort of harrowing journey of becoming aware was a finally truly getting over, so let's call it relinquishment, relinquishing the idea of the human as the special animal, you know, the human as the product of all evolution, look at us, and finally relinquishing the separateness from Earth that I carried around all the time, but kept trying to use my head and my thoughts to get out of. There's a reckoning that was the gift of GEM's work and participation in the forum that allowed me to finally relinquish. And that becomes both resilience in terms of the earth as partner and me as servant and steward. And that is a source now of emotional resilience and community resilience through permaculture and other communities. And it's also a restoration or a bringing back of indigenous ways of naming things, indigenous ways of being with, indigenous ways of counsel. And there's a creation there that returns us to what was working prior to our colonized thinking. And so it's just been a beautiful unfolding over the last couple of years now. And so, yeah, that's how this is all showing up over here.
Thank you, Brennan. So we're just about at time for the first section, and I love it that people are answering chat questions in the chat. So I'm just going to close with a couple of things. A word about capacity. I could imagine all kinds of collaborations and projects of the Deep Adaptation Forum and transition groups. And just so you know, we are pretty much a volunteer organization, and you're meeting some of the most overextended and in the know volunteers here right now. So if you've got an idea, go for it, and we'll tell you what we know, and we may or may not be able to sign up with you, because I, for one, am really trying to let things go rather than take things on just at the moment. But we love to brainstorm, so don't let that stop you. And so here's what's going to happen now. We're going to take a 5-minute break. During the 5-minute break, there will be a display of your choice of groups for the second hour. You will notice that some of them are open and some of them are closed. Closed just means that after the first 5 minutes or so, there will be group work going on that you don't want to step into the middle of. Open means you can come and go and try different things. So, and the people who are facilitating each of those breakouts, aside from the Q&A, because you've already met David and Wendy, and Q&A is a pretty straightforward idea, the rest of us will be saying just a few words about their groups. So we're almost on time. I will see you in 5 minutes. The first breakout room will be questions and answers with David and Wendy. And I will point out that you could discuss possible collaborations. Sasha, will you tell us about the second room?
Yes, mine's called Sacred Earth Connection, and it's just an opportunity for people to talk about different ways that you connect with the earth or with the web of life in ways that honor the sacredness of life and however that means to you. And usually when I'm in a group like this, people have various ways of doing that, and it's really affirming for us all to talk together about it.
Thank you. Lisa, a few words on the language of collapse.
Yeah, thanks. I noticed a number of people in the chat already kind of dove into what their familiar concepts are, their metaphors that they use, like cancer or palliative care, or the other language than the word collapse. And maybe people who are coming from different cultures have different ways of understanding the times we're in. And I'd love to hear some diversity. Nobody's attached to the word collapse. It's whatever the language is that's alive for you that helps you make sense of things or helps you communicate it to others in your life, whatever level in your life, at home or at work or on the bus. Just some familiarity with what range of language and metaphor is available around this issue. I think it'll be fun. Thanks.
Thank you. Dean, would you like to tell us about sharing the real wealth?
Yeah, I've been involved not only with deep adaptation and these conversations about resilience and the 4 Rs and so on, but also for a number of years now, also been trained to work with people who are in the midst of trying to recover from natural disasters and remarkably challenging circumstances. And what I've seen time and time again and felt time and time again is the remarkable gift and intimacy that it is when people share what they're challenged by, what they're facing, and then also share what are they able to pull up in themselves and their family and so on in terms of inner resources to be able to face those challenges. It's a remarkably intimate and beautiful sharing.
Thank you, Dean. Let's see, I think I'm next. Yes. So those grief rituals I was telling you about, that's what we're going to do with poetry and a simple ritual involving water and stones. And that's what that circle center square is about. And it will be a deep dive, and I'll take you to the other side safely. And Brennan, you want to tell us about Through Grief to Vision, a somatic approach?
I'll take you to the other side safely. That's beautifully said, Terry. Yeah, so I mentioned that I was trying to get out of my head for a long time. And one of the things that finally helped me really be connected to the earth and be one with this body that I am and the earth that I am is somatic practices or embodied practices of movement and centering. So we'll just do a couple of those, and then that's personal resilience. And then by sharing our emotions and discussions about the future, we'll look at what does it look like in dialogue to create community resilience.
Welcome back, everybody. That was a little sudden on my end. That's just the way of Zoom, you know. You're in the middle of the conversation and boom, out of the breakout room you go. I hope it wasn't too hard. If anybody needs to finish a sentence, now's your chance.
I would love to. This is Dean Walker, and y'all know who was in my group. I just wanted to finish my acknowledgement of the transition movement and how I had discovered it for myself back in 2017, actually 2015. And it at that time was going through a real lull in my area. And I just thought, this is too brilliant an idea. This is too good to fade out. And long story short, I was able to connect with people who were very much a part of breathing new energy into the region that I was aware of. And it's just been such a source of inspiration. And now that this next level that people are taking it to in terms of the materials and videos and so on that are being put out, I'm just so thankful to be knowing about you all, and thank you to whoever was involved with getting it up to this next level. It's been really inspiring to see.
All right. So, and now we're closing it out. Kat is kind of our bridge between transition and deep adaptation, and she has a survey she would like to provide for you. And she'll put that in the chat momentarily.
It's a very ugly
feedback
link.
form. Feedback form.
Yes, it's a very ugly link, and I apologize for that, but there it is.
All right. And I know that people put a lot of work into making this event happen, so I know they'd appreciate our feedback. And now, because the group is large, I would ask you to give your closing reflection in the chat. And it looks like this. As a result of this workshop, I fill in the blank, or as a result of this workshop, we fill in the blank. And there it is in the chat to get you started. And I'll be happy to read some of them as they come across. I realize I have allies all over. That's a nice one to see. I saw the diversity and preciousness of our being. That's the gift of touching our mortality. And I think we actually have, my goodness, have we finished early? Can such a thing happen? Holy cow. What is that about? If you have any resources that you'd like to share related to deep adaptation, go ahead and put them in the chat as well. And I'm putting in radicaljoy.org, which is something that Sasha introduced me to. And it is a really wonderful way to honor a place, a part of the earth, with both grief and gratitude. And yeah, we have a very talented group of volunteers here who, many of whom do their own thing related to deep adaptation. So volunteers, feel free to put your stuff in there as well.
And
There
there's a
was
tech support note. Maybe I could just say you can save the chat so you don't have to scramble madly reading everything. There's a button at the bottom right hand corner of the chat. There's three dots. If you click on the three dots at the top, there's a save chat option, and there'll be a little folder in somewhere in your file world, your computer, that you can find later by the date, if nothing else.
Okay, thanks for all the wonderful resources, people. Do any of our forum people have any parting words that they'd like to give? I'm all out of words.
Just want to thank everyone for making the effort to join us and contributing your points of view. It's been wonderful to meet a couple of you and to see everyone. Thank you so much.